Good evening, everybody. This is, I think, our fifth talk now, raising funds for our Ada Neil Chew statue. And it is a pleasure to welcome Hazel Reeves. I will let Hazel introduce herself because I always think people could do it far better themselves than anybody else. But tonight it's a slightly different talk, and this is the importance of women's statues. In the past, we've done it on women who have got statues. So I'll be over to you. Questions, as we said, put in the chat as we go along, or at the end, we'll open it up to question and answers as well. But thank you, Hazel, for your time and for putting the presentation together.
My pleasure. Thank you, Kate, and welcome all. So this is my passion, women's statues. And oh, hang on. I've already managed to find a glitch with the system. Hang on. There we are. So the question is, why do we need statues of women? And well, I think it's really about a political story. It's about justice. Is it fair that the majority of statues are of men? Here they are, oversized men, lording it over the masses from high on their lofty plinths. So it's about power and money. If you think back to 2016, when the Emmeline project was started, there were 17 statues in Manchester and only one of a woman. And I know you know who that is. Yes, I can tell by your faces. Yes, it was indeed Queen Victoria. So at that point, across the country, there's about 2.6% of statues were of non-royal women. Now, I'm pleased to say I have contributed a few more statues of women since then, but it's about whose stories get told. And that's about who does society value. And there are two women that I hadn't known about before there was discussions of their statues. So here we have our wonderful Elizabeth Wolstenholme Elmy, a real radical, a visionary, and she was written out of history, and in fact, even out of the suffragist history. And she was incredible in terms of promoting a wide range of rights for women. And now she has a statue. Now we get to know her a little bit more. And she has been absolutely key in where we are now today. And Ada, likewise, Ada Neil Chew. I didn't know of Ada until I was approached by Kate. This, a working class woman, quite extraordinary, championing women workers' rights, championing women's rights more general and the rights to vote. So we need to tell her story. We've started telling Elizabeth's story. Part of that is with the statue, but we need to tell these women's stories. And it's about how do we rewrite history, but we're doing it this time in 3D. How do we write Ada and Elizabeth back into history where they belong, and making them, I guess, more visible. And so literally we are sort of carving out a space, a public space for them. It's about telling stories of women's lives, and that's all women's lives, women of colour, working class women. We need to get these stories out. I'm only 2 generations away from the workhouse and from domestic service. And I think often it's what might be deemed as ordinary women's lives tend to be missed out. And the cracker packers, those biscuit factory workers in Carlisle, they were really important in terms of social economy, and the archives here can show you them at work. But it was a real joy to work with the retired and the current workers that now in the McVitie's factory. And they were obviously very instrumental in shaping the statue itself. So my job is to tell the story, find a way of being able to communicate with the public and get people engaged and appreciate the subjects. So here we've got, my idea was of a cracker packer from the olden times, a cracker packer from current times with the hairnet and the safety boots and the white coat, telling stories and, you know, jokes across time. So this is my role. Once we've got the idea, then actually creating it. And then finally we have the great reveal. And here are the retired and current cracker packers who helped design it, but also unveiled the statue. So it was a very special day for us. It's also about telling stories of women's struggles for social justice, a real passion of mine. And I take inspiration from images of the times. So we have, you know, we've got Sylvia Pankhurst, we've got Emmeline Pankhurst, we've got all sorts of people here, just giving a sense of how you might perhaps portray the messages we want. And for my idea for Emmeline was this little maquette that I made and that won the competition. And, you know, it's what's this story? So I wanted to pick a period of times. This is 1908, 1909, a real pivotal point for the suffragists. They were incensed by repeated political betrayal. And it was time for deeds, not words. So enough was enough. And so this gives you an idea of how the women were out on the streets, ringing bells, summoning people from out of the homes and factories to come and listen. And somebody would bring something like a kitchen chair out. So Emmeline, who was only 5 foot tall, could climb atop and then arm outstretch, urge women to rise up and demand the vote. So this idea becomes the final piece in clay. In total, I think she's 6.5 foot here, but 7.5 in total. But also a story, for example, like Ada. I mean, I was really struck by the letters that she wrote and the, in effect, sort of columns that she wrote for the Crewe Chronicle, not Chronicle. Absolutely captivated by them. What an extraordinary young woman. She was only 24 when she was articulating so clearly and powerfully what the problems were. So these are probably quotations you might be familiar with. We are suffering from a great evil which stands in urgent need of redressing. A living wage, ours is a lingering, dying wage. But we're not asking for pity, sir. We ask for justice. I mean, how powerful is that? And just at the age of 24, quite inspiring. So we need to think about what story we want to tell. And so I'm captivated by those letters. Here we can see that she went on to fight more broadly for rights, for women's rights, women's workers' rights, for the rights of poor people, and also for peace. So telling these stories is critical. It's also about challenging stereotypes of women. So many statues have, you know, naked women draped at the feet to these great men, passive, being dominated, unnamed. So it's really important that we use statues as the opportunity to challenge these stereotypes. And so whenever I'm thinking about the story I want to tell and how I want to depict someone, I'm thinking about that. So with Elizabeth, I wanted to show how powerfully and persuasively she used words to bring about change. So I knew I wanted her to be active, I wanted to be on the streets, and I want her to be engaging passers-by, engaging with women and men, urging them to educate their daughters, for example. And I wanted her to be life size. She was tiny. She was even more tiny than Emmeline. So she would have been about 4 foot 10, 11. And to show that it doesn't matter your size, it's really who you are and the power you have within you to bring change about. It's also about developing pride in local women. And I think, again, back to the Cracker Packers, really, because I could just really see it throughout the process, how much pride they had in the work they did, but also in their heritage. So this is the community engagement workshop, trying to work with me how to design the statue and the stances of the two women. I mean, it was just hilarious. And at the unveiling, there was so much pride and there's a real ownership of the statue. And that's what you really want as a project. You want people to be the custodians of the statue into the future. And here we are in Congleton. The whole of Congleton is out on the streets. And who would think that early on in the process that there was not just sort of Elizabeth who, but also resistance to the statues. So you've got a real sense of ownership and pride in local women, including here with Elizabeth. So it's also about providing role models on our streets. So it's saying women have done and have always done incredible things, and you can too. About building self-belief, about building ambition, about understanding how to work collectively towards goals. And here at the unveiling of Elizabeth, we've got two role models. We've not only got Elizabeth, our bronze role model, we have the incredible Baroness Hale of Richmond, who was a former president of the Supreme Court. Amazing woman, and only a tiny bit taller than Elizabeth, in fact. So we had a two for the price of one there. And of course, it goes beyond the unveiling as well. Here we've got our own Sue here with Kay and the local brownie troupe. So it's what happens beyond the unveiling as well. It has to have a life. It has to be a catalyst. It's also about bringing people together. A statue can bring people together. Here it's in my studio during the process of making. So there was the women councillors of Manchester, along with workers and volunteers for Safe Spots, the domestic violence charity, that came to the studio to have a look and engage with the whole process. And they just loved being part of it. And they spent the day before in the Houses of Parliament being shown around by, I think, Helen Pankhurst. So it's an opportunity to engage people. Of course, unveilings, this in St. Peter's Square, there were up between 6,000 and 7,000 people there. And this was in 2018, on the 14th of December, marking the 100th anniversary of when the first women actually were able to put their ballot in the box. And this day was a real example of solidarity and hope and also a real pledge to continue the activism, as it is, as we know, so much needed. And my plan worked. She's never alone. I wanted the space around her to be a gathering point. And I love getting selfies from people telling me what she's up to, where they, why they've seen her, why they've been there, how they feel about her. But it could also be about more poignant moments about remembering together. If you think back to 2021, I was lighting a candle in Brighton, whilst in St. Peter's Square, women had chosen to come to Emmeline and place flowers and placards and candles at her feet as a part of a vigil for Sarah Everard. It's also about inspiring activism, because we need more Adas, we need more Elizabeths, we need more Emmeline's. And on the day of the unveiling of our Emmeline, I dedicated the statue to the modern day Emmeline's, because we really need to encourage those that are working now, inspire those in the future. And she's embraced by the local women's groups and other activists. So you've got, Extinction Rebellion there using her and her meeting circle as a point of demonstrations and protests. And you've got a wonderful range of women's groups like Women Asylum Seekers Together. You've got Safe Spots, Manchester Women's Aid, the Pankhurst Centre, really using her to get across messages ongoing around, for example, the 16 days of activism. So, I mean, that, brings joy to my heart to see her being used. And they're so respectful. They usually contact me and say, is it okay if we dress her up? Is it okay if we put this on her? And it's about inspiring a new generation. We need to do this succession planning. I mean, I don't know about you, but I'm not getting any younger. So we need to inspire the new generation of young girls. Here we've got Fatima Shahid, who spoke so powerfully at the unveiling, to inspire young boys here in Congleton, or even the youngest of the young, the babies, in Manchester. So this is incredibly important, and statues can play their role in this. So I suppose the message is that there is hope. Change can happen. We need to continue to bring pressure to bear, and we also need to be ever vigilant. So I just wanted to finish with a short clip from the unveiling video of our Emmeline, and then perhaps if you can't hear the sound, Kate, just give me a wave.
As a young person, the statue means a lot to me and my generation. It's a symbol of a woman who did good for the women of Manchester. It's a symbol of equality, and it's a symbol of Manchester being a modern and forward-looking city. Today has been really good. I really liked going on the march.
Been involved in the march today. We've also had some involvement with workshops, creating artwork for today.
And to bring the younger generations to be part of such a memorable occasion that will be lasting in Manchester for a long time is very significant for us.
It's been wonderful, the thousands of people coming to celebrate, the chanting, the marching, the sense of energy, of positivism.
Emmeline Pankhurst really deserved this statue, and if it wasn't for Emmeline, we wouldn't have the vote. Nothing could have been better, because it was the best day of my life.
We're not at our destination. We're not at the destination of equality, and we've still got so much to do. Hence the importance of having young people asking questions here, chanting, chanting equality, when do we want it? Now. Really powerful.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I'll open it up. Has anyone got any questions, either ask or put it in the chat? That would be great. Or just any comments in general. I know I've got one, but I'll see if anyone else wants to ask anything first. Take yourself off mute as well if you want to just ask a question. Susan?
Oh, which Susan there's two? Oh, I'm on off mute, aren't I? For some reason. I like the way you talked about kind of Emmeline Pankhurst not being alone. I remember when I went to go and visit her. I got everyone else in the picture. It was actually quite annoying because she is quite popular. But every time I tried to take a photo, there was just someone else taking a photo, and it was but it does raise the point about accessibility. So when you look at those kind of like older generation of men, high on plinths, and you've got to kind of make art kind of more accessible. And I like the fact that you mentioned about the one in Congleton about being, she was quite small, and when I went to go and see it, it was kind of, wow, it's tiny, but she needs to be there, she needs to be on the streets, because that was part of her work anyway, obviously kind of working with people. But yeah, I mean, do you feel the Ada statue, do you feel that will be on the same realm? Have you got a spot for it? Is it will it be as accessible as your other statues?
Well, it's me organising the Ada, and yeah, hopefully it will be in the public realm. Unofficially, Cheshire East have, kind of told me they've got a place for it as part of our regeneration in the town, or that there's another two options, which would be where people gather. So we're quite happy with where that would be. So fingers crossed we get it where we want it to be. Yeah, but I think once I keep telling them how much, that how many people have been going to Congleton, and they're aware of it because that's Cheshire East as well. I think they see it is an attraction as well, isn't it? People go to the towns to visit the statues, so they are attractions as well. And that's what we wanted to create, that people can go to Congleton and they can come to Crewe to see Ada and Elizabeth in the same day.
I'll just address your point, Susan, in terms of the first of all, the annoying bit, being annoying that everybody's around it. So my family were really annoyed at the unveiling because it's so huge, and of course I was sort of being rushed around doing all the press and stuff, and they never got a chance to have a photo of me and them without other people around. I mean, it was so odd because I was having photos taken with people I didn't know who they were. And it turns out one of them was Andy Burnham. I had no idea who he was and why he was demanding, a picture with me. So it took me another 6 months before I went back, and they could just sit quietly and then take some photos in between people, but just to sit and reflect and think, okay, that was okay. Because I think as artists, you sort of, you're forever thinking, oh, look at that bit there, I could have done that slightly better. You're never quite satisfied. But actually, it was 6 months later, it was like, okay, enough is enough. I did what I did, and I'm actually really pleased with it. But it's normally not, it takes a while to get to that stage. In terms of accessibility, it was so important for me that while she is on a chair, she's not on one of these lofty, she's not up. There's a reason why there's a chair, because she did have to be elevated. The suffragists and suffragettes used to have to elevate themselves with carts and wagons and tables, and chairs. So it was actually, I wanted it to be as if she was in St. Peter's Square. That was what she'd have to do. But she's close enough to everybody to be able to touch her and embrace her and sort of feel much more connected to her. So I think it's sort of it's a bit naff, but sort of almost democratizing statues in the sense of just making it more relevant to people. There's the other square, I can't remember the square's name, in Manchester, and it's all these sort of, those images I showed, these men long forgotten up on these high on these high plinths. So just people don't get it. If I think about when I was young, I never connected to statues. I was never interested in statues until I became a sculptor, because they never spoke to me. They were aloof. They were usually male, and they held no interest for me. So I think accessibility in many ways is important, and I think the size of the meeting circle is really important. So if somebody was using a wheelchair, they could get around and enjoy her. And so I'm very much for having things on ground level or near ground level. So with Ada, we're still at the design phase, and we've got our community workshop coming next week to get some ideas. But I don't think anybody's going to be proposing a 9-foot, plinth to sit on top of. And I think back to the Emmeline Pankhurst competition, and there was somebody that was recommending 9-foot suffragettes, including Emmeline and her daughters, on top of a really huge plinth, with the idea that it had to be grand. It was really interesting because it didn't really fit the brief, which is about, Emmeline was about the people and engaging with people and the importance of that. So I think it was at that point I realized that, probably because my background is around promoting women's rights internationally, that I just had I came from a different angle. Other sculptors were more interested in it being decorative or big and powerful, or had an idea of women as powerful women being aggressive, which is like, no, you've missed the point. Aggression isn't about power. So yeah.
Any other questions or comments at all?
Sue's heard it all before.
I was just going to say, sorry, how hard it is to get people to see beyond the statue. From our side, when we're fundraising,
Yeah.
and what we're really trying to get across is exactly what you've captured in your presentation. It's not the statue, it's the stories behind the statue that gets people researching, or it's something that we can do a talk on. And that's what we're trying to get across to people. Statues have so much more of a meaning than a statue to go and visit as well.
Yeah, and I think for me, there's no point me spending months and months in the studio for something which people don't want, won't engage with, that doesn't have a life beyond the unveiling. It has to be the whole process, and it has to be about, yes, mining that archive and the history and bringing that to the fore, making that visible, but is also using it in modern day to actually inspire and engage with people to take up their role as feminists, as activists, and keep going. Because I think behind every activist, deep is hope. But you need encouragement, you need inspiration, and I think statues are part of that. And of course, I'm not saying that statues are the answer to women's problems. They're not. But it's one of the ways in which you can highlight the role of women. And I think it's underestimated how people's attitudes and stereotypes of women stop the progress. And so statues are one way of opening that up, and it's about sort of cultural and social aspects as well. And challenging stereotypes is the work I did before I was a sculptor. And we still got a lot of work to do on that. Yeah.
Oh, thank you. Any other comments or anybody want to say? The recording will be sent out anyway. And I'm looking forward to the community event next week. Because I think that for us will bring it's a part of, obviously Sue's experienced it before, but it'll bring the part of the journey to the statue to life as well.
Yeah. yeah, I'm really looking forward to it.
Mm. Right, thank you very much. Thank you for your time, and thank you for everyone for joining us as well. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Bye, Hazel. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Hazel.
Pleasure.
Cheers, bye.
Bye. Bye.